Hey there, my name is John, and I'm mostly famous for illegally crossing from Mexico to USA. Just kidding, of course I'm not famous, but I'm known for making these long storytelling narrated videos. I'm also known for flipping houses. That's right, I'm investing in real estate. Recently, I've been making videos for my current project house. I converted this 130 years old brick house into 3 condo townhouse style units. From the original house remained only the perimeter brick walls and the roof after demolition. I gutted it out completely, and inside of all that newly gained open space, I built in wood frame structure shaping these new units. So I married these two styles. I built an American stick frame structure inside of an old Czech brick house. But it's been a while since I've posted my latest update. Last video update I uploaded was over 4 months ago, on June 10th, 2021 to be exact. If you tap the banner in the corner of your screen, you can catch up with it right there. The time just flies. Back then I told myself I'm gonna upload next video after my insulated facade gets finished. According to the stucco contractor I hired at that time, that was supposed to happen by the end of June 2021, not 4 months later. So what exactly happened? What exactly caused yet another delay on my project progress? Let's find out. So after swapping 4 contractors and pitching in hard myself as well, my facade is now finally finished. I've been brainstorming a lot lately to come up with some sort of concept for my next video update, how I'm actually gonna cover this facade nightmare story that caused me so much trouble. How something so routine, so trivial as an insulated facade installation that's been used for decades at this part of the world can turn into such a never-ending clusterfuck. How something so simple, so trivial as attaching rectangle styrofoam blocks to a wall and make a straight line can turn into mission fucking impossible. I felt like when you're putting a puzzle together, a really big puzzle, and you can't find this one piece like forever and you're stuck and can't move on. How this one piece of a puzzle, one process step can completely throw off your entire project. Well, this has not been the only piece of a puzzle that I've been missing. There is more to the story that causes my project to stall right now than just the facade. The subsidy for insulation application being cancelled by the certified middleman just because he said so, and I have not received the $20,000 government fund that I needed to finish the parking lot and the front and rear decks. So this means that if everything went well with the facade and the subsidy, I could have been doing totally different things by now. Maybe the first condo would have been already sold and I'd be working on finishing the remaining 2 condos, but that's not happening. What's happening instead is that I ran out of cash and I had to take another jobs to survive because the YouTube algorithm completely stopped recommending my content, hence bringing in no income. So at first I took a job as a gravestone installer with my neighbor across the street, cutting big granite slabs into shapes and then installing them at the graveyard. He's been backed up with orders, probably thanks to COVID, sadly, complaining he's unable to fulfill. So I offered him a help since I'm stuck with the facade. So by the time I finished everything I could with the framing, insulation and plumbing at my unfinished condos, I started working with them. After I finished helping there, I took another job with my other neighbor, fitting in a bathroom in his attic space. So that's actually what I'm working on right now to make some cash for my house. In the meantime, I'm still waiting for some legislation bureaucracy shit to complete so I can put the first condo up for sale as it is. But that's gonna take probably another 2 months, so I'm just taking advantage of this dead space to earn some cash elsewhere. But instead of working for other people, what I should really be doing is to work on my own project. It's been an entire year since the facade install started in October 2020. So last summer 2020, when it was still just a big mess around my house, just holes in the ground, piles of dirt and trash and other materials around my house, I've been hauling ass to wrap it all up by the end of the summer, backfill all the holes and prepare everything so I can have the facade done in autumn before the winter comes. And the plan was to then finish the inside of the first condo, cash out the subsidy funds and have it all ready for sale sometimes in March, but that didn't happen. So while I was working on the roof, straightening, leveling the old crooked roof rafters, installing battens and skylights, I had a gypsy crew digging trenches around the entire house perimeter to access the foundation to correct the waterproofing issue. I also had a mason crew there to smooth out the foundation wall surface for applying the asphalt waterproofing liner, which didn't go well. They didn't know what they were doing. They messed it up. Then the gypsy crew didn't come back to finish the job even though I paid them some advance money. The mason crew quit showing up too, and the weather didn't cooperate either. So I ended up finishing most of it myself. I knew I had to keep going because I was determined to wrap it all up. So I finished preparing the roof and had roofers to install the metal sheets that looked like brick shingles. They didn't do a great job either, but at least it wasn't raining inside my house anymore after 6 months of constantly repositioning buckets and lunch trays so my new floors don't get ruined. In the meantime, I also built remaining stairs inside, and I also worked on some more framing on the rainy days. So the gypsy crew never came back, and I had to redig all the trenches again because all that dirt collapsed back in the holes after all this heavy rain. Then I finished the waterproofing, rolling up and welding the asphalt sheets to the walls under grade, laid down grounding strip around entire house perimeter. Then I laid down the French drain pipe around the perimeter in bed of gravel as well. After I finished the waterproofing and French drains, I also prepared the connections for gutter downspouts, rainwater system, repaired damaged walls in the basement, and applied a coat of cement, which turned out to be a really bad idea, and all the cement started peeling off the walls. So I scraped it off again and applied yet another coat of special mixture for damp walls. That turned out to not work either later on and started peeling off as well. So I kinda skipped on this issue and moved on. Then also needed to get rid of all the piles of gravel which I hauled down to the basement and spread down there on the ground to cover the standing water. I needed to get rid of all the trash to clear the yard. I had to burn all the wood because it wouldn't fit in the rental dumpster. Then I finally rented the mini excavator and leveled the yard. While leveling the yard, I also laid down the rainwater pipes and got rid of the remaining pile of debris. I also used the excavator to dig a big hole at the south side of the house where I needed to finish the basement access shaft, lay down the pipes for the wastewater, all diverted to the sewer that happens to be located on my property. Or at least that's what I thought at that time. Later on I realized that the manhole is located on the city land, so I contacted the city hall and requested for purchase availability. And after a lengthy approval process, I just recently additionally purchased this little front yard corner to merge it with my land. So I built the basement access shaft using concrete blocks on top of the existing walls. I reused some of the scrap bricks for the walls and concrete curbs for the top opening. Finished repairing the rest of the deteriorating basement walls, waterproofed everything, and then drilled holes for the wastewater pipes. The reason there are 3 of them, one for each condo, is that originally there were supposed to be separate septic tanks for each condo, but during the process I learned that all the houses in the neighborhood are gonna get connected to the existing sewer in a couple of years, so I scratched the septic tanks and hooked it up to the sewer directly without permit, and also needed to relocate the main water supply pipe to the basement access shaft where the water meter is now located. After all this work, I could finally rent the excavator again and backfill the big hole and make it look like nothing ever happened here. I also wanted to use the mini excavator to prep the surface for the parking lot, but I had no enough time for that. Backfilling the hole took longer than expected with running the jumping jack in between. I wanted to extend the excavator rental by 1 day, but they had it booked and I had to return it. So because I missed the window of opportunity to do it right then, I still have a pile of concrete debris where the parking lot needs to be. Alright, so sometimes during this time in August 2020, I've been already making phone calls and searching for a facade contractor, but all the companies were not able to work on my house this year. Everybody was already booked till next year. The main problem with all these contractors is they don't have enough workers. But I was persistent and I kept calling. I didn't feel like I want to wait with the facade till next year. I wanted to have the facade done this year so I can start selling the condos the upcoming spring. So I kept calling and finally found a company who was available to work on my house. So the first week of September, I signed a contract with the first facade contractor. I was so excited because by this time I was already really tired from all the back-breaking work. My whole body was aching. I needed a break. Now I felt like everything is good, everything is gonna pan out. The company is gonna take care of me, take care of my house, take care of my facade, while I can focus on working on the inside. They said they're gonna have my facade done by the end of October last year. So I prepared the yard for seeding the grass, raked out remaining debris I spread out with the excavator, and just watched it grow while finishing other things. I started preparing the house for the facade installation. I needed to delete the garage door opening, so I hauled large bricks and mortar on the back seat of my passenger vehicle and turned it into lowrider. Then finished sealing the tape around all the new doors. During this activity, I realized some doors been installed incorrectly by the installers, so I called the company and had it repaired under warranty. I had to have it fixed before the facade gets put up. Also, during this time, I've been searching for a gas contractor for my gas hookup connections, but he kept postponing the installation and I really needed to have it done before the other guys start putting up the styrofoam blocks. But he fucking quit on me. So I desperately started searching for another gas contractor. I informed the facade guy that I have this little problem with the gas lines, and by a coincidence, his uncle actually has a heat and gas and plumbing company and hooked me up. So luckily, this got eventually done. Then while I was waiting on them contractors to get started working on the facade, I started preparing the installations on the inside. I started working on the plumbing and the electrical, and then finally they brought the material, put the scaffolding up, and on October 21st, 2020, they started working on the facade and attached first set of styrofoam blocks. So the actual facade install started few weeks too late already. But I was excited anyway. I was really happy that my house will finally get finished on the exterior and I'll be able to put it up for sale soon. I was happy that I found a company who will take care of me, my house, my facade, while I can focus on working on the interior. But very soon, my excitement turned into disappointment. They were supposed to be done by the end of October, but that was not gonna happen due to a couple of factors. Primary factor, the COVID, secondary factor, the weather. But they told me they're gonna have it done before Christmas. It was okay with me as long as they get it done before I get finished on the inside. So they started working on it, but right from the start, I noticed their sloppy work. Really slow process. The boss sent me there only 2, sometimes 3 guys. I thought he's gonna have like a entire crew to work on it to get it done quickly before the freezing temperatures and snow hits. You can't do this type of work during winter. So they kept starting late and finish early and making really slow progress. Along with the slow moving work, I noticed that the thickness of the insulation is greater than what it needs to be. The thing was that according to my blueprint, I had the facade configured using gray styrofoam of 14 centimeters thickness, but the facade guy talked me into using 16 centimeters thick white styrofoam. It just needs to be a little thicker than the gray styrofoam to have equal insulating properties. He's talked me into it because he's had some leftovers in the warehouse and wouldn't need to wait for the gray styrofoam order to arrive. So at that moment, I was okay with just 2 extra centimeters over. See, the thing is, I didn't want to add too much thickness to what was already thick brick walls. But during the sloppy install, I realized that they added even more thickness. I measured it after they left the first day and it was 22 centimeters. I was going mad. They started applying the 16 centimeter blocks on the highest points of the walls. See, the walls are not exactly straight. They have low points and high points. They should have measured it and determined where they need to reduce the styrofoam blocks and where they need to add more to achieve the required thickness of 16 centimeters plus, let's say, 1 centimeter of mud. So the actual thickness should be 17 centimeters tops, not 22 centimeters. So at that point, Instead of the original 14 centimeters plus 1 centimeter of mud, which totals 15 centimeters, I now had 7 centimeters thicker walls. I was not happy. They basically added 3 unnecessary inches to the thickness of the wall. The following morning they came back to work. I called their boss and had the blocks torn down and have it redone. I tried to explain them my issue, but my complaints and my requests were not entirely getting through. So the boss came over and they all kept arguing with me that that's how it's gonna get done, and reduced the thickness just sporadically to 19 centimeters. I needed them to get it down to 17 centimeters, but they said that's the best they can do. After a while I gave up the arguing because time was flying and I just needed to get it done before Christmas. So from the get-go the facade installation is fucked. Now I had thicker walls, and because of the thicker opening surrounds, they're gonna need to match the thickness at the front of the house as well, which means for me more money for the material and the labor. They wanted to charge me extra 220 Czech crowns per square meter for the extra work for leveling the walls, and I wouldn't agree with that. You know, I thought that while they'll be putting the facade up, I'll be working on the inside and they'll just take care of it. But instead they gave me a couple of crackheads to work on my house without supervision, and I couldn't focus on anything. I felt like I needed to constantly interrupt my framing work and going outside, checking on them as they slowly progressed, making me really disappointed, questioning my decision making. They've been starting late and finishing early, and I started making phone calls again. I have not made peace with the extra costs and the slow progress. The job was a mess. The underlayer that they started applying that was supposed to even out the brick surface was even worse than the original walls. One day I counted, and in 2 people they put up only 7 blocks of styrofoam during the entire shift. I don't know how this could be profitable for them. Maybe working by the hour? So I called the boss several times and complained about the slow process, saying that at this pace they won't be able to put it up until the next Christmas, not this Christmas. He was like, well, I don't have more people. If you don't like it, we can quit and you can try to find someone else to finish it up. I was going furious. I had no leverage, so I'm weighing all the options. After 3 weeks of sloppy work, I got just 1 wall done like shit. The surface is pretty straight, but underneath is just shit. So what am I actually gonna do now? It's mid-November. At this time, I won't be able to find anyone else to finish the rest of my house. I'm fucked. I'm gonna need to wait till the next year anyway. Those were my thoughts. I'm gonna end up doing the facade the next year, which I didn't want to happen at all. Time is money. This whole situation was so frustrating. I felt miserable. Alright, so I started making phone calls anyway, hoping that I will find someone who can take over. Considering all the circumstances with COVID, lack of workers, end of the season, I felt pretty pessimistic about it. But miraculously enough, I was able to find another company who was willing to work on it during winter when weather permits. I explained them my situation with the thickness problem and that I need to match the thickness at the front of the house now. They came look at it and sent me a pricing quote, which I agreed with even though it was more expensive than the previous one. So I ended the relationship with the previous guy. They took the scaffolding down, collected all the material and left. I sent him some money and moved on. The only positive outcome from this fuck up was that his uncle that he hooked me up with actually did finish the gas lines running from the main valve to the gas meters and then to the condo units. So ironically, without this facade contractor, I probably wouldn't have the gas lines installed yet at that time. So anyway, in the meantime, I finished the plumbing and electrical on the inside and had drywall delivered and started hanging it up. It took me 3 weeks to hang the entire condo up all by myself. And then on November 25th, I started taping. On December 8th, the new facade crew started working on my house, and again, I started feeling happy and excited that I found someone who's gonna take care of me and my house. That they're gonna take care of the facade and I won't need to babysit the crew constantly, making sure they're doing whatever they're supposed to, and I could focus on my work. Boy, was I wrong. Unfortunately, from the get-go, things didn't go exactly as planned. First thing, I asked the owner to tell the crew to not unload the scaffolding frames and the floor platforms onto my newly grown grass, because the previous crew put the styrofoam on my new grass in the backyard, and then after they removed it after a month, the grass just died. But somehow the message didn't get through, and they put the scaffolding and styrofoam right on my front yard. I was not happy. I called the boss and he apologized that he was busy and forgot to tell him, saying that they will remove it in just a couple of days because they're gonna erect the scaffolding. I asked him to make sure they move all the stuff no later than in 3 days because I don't wanna redo my front lawn. Well, that didn't happen. I got so pissed that one morning before they arrived, I removed all the stuff from the lawn by myself. They got all mad at me saying I gave them more work, but I was like, seriously? You guys gave me more work. So they started working in really fast pace. Compared to the first company, it was like night and day. They were like bam, 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 putting up the styrofoam blocks in lightning speed. Just 2 guys, but really, really fast. Probably not paid by the hour, but by the job. I was like, okay, this is going great. If the weather permits, I'm gonna have my facade up by the spring. I had a good feeling about it that I finally found a company who's gonna take care of me and take care of my house and my facade. So I kept working on my drywall and randomly came out to check on the speedy process, and I noticed that they don't have the first row of styrofoam blocks completely straight. The whole walls are kind of curved. And I told the guys, hey guys, you have humps there. They totally ignored my complaints, telling me, hey boss, it's okay, don't worry, nobody's gonna notice, and just kept working, putting up the styrofoam blocks like bam, bam, bam. Next rows of styrofoam blocks coming up really fast. All the following rows just copying the first curved row, which caused that the entire wall is now curved like a banana. So I'm standing there looking at it and can't believe what's happening. So no, again, they are not able to take care of me, take care of my house, take care of my facade. They are not able to make sure my house is gonna be straight. Why should I be happy with curved walls? So I started making phone calls to the boss, the owner, again. They came over and inspected it and informed me that this is within tolerable limits. I couldn't believe that they blew me off like that. I was freaking out. I kept complaining and pushing them to find a solution on how to straighten out the walls, but they kept making excuses, trying to convince me that it's okay, it's within tolerance, etc. This back and forth conversation turned into email war. More people from the company came over to inspect it in following days, but found no errors. My message was not getting through again. They wanted to charge me 400,000 Czech crowns for the facade installation, but I'm gonna end up with curved walls? My brain started boiling again. I had no idea what I'm gonna do, how I'm gonna deal with this situation. I had no leverage again on these guys. I decided I need to wait till they do more work and ask for another advance payment. Then I will have some leverage. If they want the money, they will need to correct the issues. So I waited a few more days before I started complaining again. Soon they moved onto another wall, finished the front, then the north gable wall, and then continued at the south gable wall. They've been hauling ass. It took them just over a week to cover nearly the rest of the house. The previous crew took 3 weeks to cover just the back wall, while these 2 guys covered remaining 3 walls in just 10 days. They worked much faster, but the quality was miserable. Nothing was straight, the walls were out of plumb, plus curved like bananas. And then one day on Friday, December 18th, while I'm working inside upstairs, one of the guys hollered at me and says, hey boss, come outside, look at it, it's not lining up. I'm like, what the fuck is going on now? What is not lining up? So I came outside and he's pointing at the corner of the top row of the styrofoam overlapping the rake frame. I was like, I told you guys you needed to first get the corner from up there using a laser or a masonry string to make sure it's gonna line up, and you got all 4 corners on the house identical. I told him that I need this wall to be the same as the opposite gable wall. I don't want this styrofoam to be overlapping over this rake frame. And I told him, if you keep going up with the styrofoam styrofoam like that, you're gonna end up scraping the wall and reducing the thickness. Then I went back to work upstairs. In a couple of hours, I came outside again and I saw they didn't do anything about it, and they just installed another 2 rows of styrofoam blocks overlapping over the rake frame. And I flipped. I was like, alright, that's it. Stop it. Stop all the work, pack your shit and get out of here. I've had enough of this. I don't want you to keep working on my house till your boss let me know a solution on how to fix all these issues. Out of plumb, curved walls, plus now the wall overlapping the rake. So I sent them home and started making phone calls. I was like, why is this happening to me? Why do I need to keep dealing with these people? Why can't nobody do such a trivial work properly? Just to make something straight using all the modern technology. Why they don't use lasers? Why do I need to end up with crooked house? So while I was complaining about the work, their accountant lady emailed me an advance payment invoice. I emailed her back, you must be out of your mind. I will pay you after you correct the issues. I thought I had the leverage now, but no. They kept claiming that their work is okay and that it doesn't need to get corrected and I need to pay the money. So I didn't pay. She kept calling me all angry. We've been shooting emails back and forth. I told them I'm gonna have the issues corrected by some other contractor or myself, and then instead of me paying you, you'll be paying me for all this extra work and lost time, because now, thanks to you, and not only you but also the previous company, I'm unable to do other things that needs to be done thanks to the unfinished facade. After I'm done, I'll be sending you an invoice. So eventually they stopped bothering me. I reached a point where I had no idea what I'm gonna do again. How am I gonna deal with this? So they took the scaffolding down and collected all their materials and left. And just like that, it was Christmas and I don't have my facade. My house just sitting there. I didn't dare to try to call another companies. I was gradually maturing to a conclusion that I'm gonna end up fixing it all by myself. But how? How am I gonna straighten up all this styrofoam surface? I had no idea how much labor is gonna be involved, how much time is gonna consume. It was so frustrating. So I started conducting my own research online, but found no real useful information. It seemed that no one has ever done such task. No one had ever had the need to reduce the thickness of the entire surface of the styrofoam by 2 to 3 centimeters. So during the winter, I worked on the inside because obviously the weather wouldn't permit working on the outside. It was really cold winter, freezing cold and snowy. At least I had some time to figure out how I'm gonna fix this. Been thinking about it constantly. So right after I finished all the taping and sanding, I moved in the house on February 1st because the place I was staying at went out of business thanks to the COVID restrictions. And I kept working. Started preparing the door trim, welded down some more waterproofing before I could start insulating the floor. So more styrofoam went down on the floor. The house should be now very well insulated and therefore energy efficient. It should have nearly passive house characteristics. The roof is also very well insulated. On top of the floor insulation, I installed underfloor heating system out of PEX piping. The PEX pipes just spirals around in 5 separate zones with circulating warm water. I also installed regular radiators upstairs. Air conditioning is not installed. Just gas heating system. Then I had a concrete contractor scheduled to pour concrete over the pipes to create sort of a floating concrete slab. When weather permitted, I finally started working on the facade. I started anchoring the styrofoam blocks to the walls by the end of February. I used these little propeller-like looking anchors that get screwed in with a special tool to be completely recessed. Remaining holes then filled in with spray foam. During this process, I noticed some of the styrofoam blocks got loose, not properly attached to the wall. Not sure if the freezing temperatures might contribute it, but in the end I counted total of 30 blocks installed by the second facade crew that got loose and I needed to reattach them. For the sole purpose of being able to repair and finish the facade, I actually purchased my own used scaffolding because renting it would be rather costly. I figured I'm just gonna buy used scaffolding and after I'm done I will sell it, and in the end it will cost me nothing. Zero expenses on scaffolding. I just recently sold it and actually sold it for more than what I paid for it. I would never rent a scaffolding ever again. At that time I was also running low on cash, so I traded in my Passat and purchased an old Renault minivan instead to generate some funds, just enough to be able to finish the facade before I file for and receive the subsidy funds. So this was the third time a scaffolding got erected at my house. I started scraping the north gable wall by hand using the styrofoam grater. At this point, I still had not figured out how I'm actually gonna be reducing the thickness of the remaining walls by 2 to 3 centimeters. This north wall was not as bad, so I just started doing it by hand. While doing that, I also got this last minute idea to spice up this little empty gable wall by installing fall arches. I had not planned on any decorations before because it just adds extra work and costs, but in the end I made a last minute decision that I'm gonna install these. So I measured out the proportions and went for it. Then I moved on to the front of the house and accurately measured out the actual thickness differences that need to be corrected and reduced. Then I finally figured out a system how I should be able to straighten out the walls using mix of power tools and hand scraper. For rough scrubbing I used the drywall sander. I bought a really rough sandpaper to remove lots of material quickly, and then for the fine tuning I just finished by hand. I scraped in sort of vertical and horizontal channels that I plumbed and used those as a guide to scrub the rest of the surface. Using this technique I came up with, I've done the entire house. There was also one more issue that the last facade crew left me with, and that was that they left all these cavities around all the gas lines and power lines between walls and styrofoam. I asked them to fill it in, but they never did it, so I also needed to make sure that all these cavities get filled in. So I made lots of holes and filled it in with spray foam to avoid future heat loss by having these compromised areas. So I worked vigorously on straightening up these walls as fast as I could because the styrofoam can't stay exposed to the UV rays for a prolonged period of time. The styrofoam just starts to degrade under the sunlight. It starts to deform, shrink, change shapes and turning yellow. I've been trying to proceed as fast as I could to avoid further degradation. I needed to cover all that surface with first coat of mud and reinforcing mesh soon. I made a plan that I'm gonna finish fixing and prepping all the walls, apply the first coat and the reinforcing mesh and get it ready, and hire yet another contractor for the second base coat and the stucco finish coat. The stucco finish coat is something I couldn't do myself. A crew of at least 4 people needs to do this at once to avoid having visible seams on the finished surface. So I proceeded with installing all the corner beads around doors, which was not an easy task because none of them goddamn corners were plumb either. So using these corner beads I also corrected all that. Made sure all the doors are nearly identical. Same height, same width, plumb, leveled square. Once all the corners were in place, I made yet another last minute decision on the decorations. I've decided I'm gonna install these fall arches with keystones above all the front doors. So I made one prototype and then just copied the remaining 5. It took me just about 2 hours to put all 6 arches up. Actually also bought a hot wire saw for cutting the styrofoam. Without a saw I wouldn't be able to finish the unfinished gable wall section. Same as with the scaffolding, I was gonna sell it once I'm finished with it. Renting it was not worth it. So I used this saw to cut out all these arches. This last minute decision turned out to be a good one because everyone is now complimenting the house. The reason was to add some old time character to the house. This house is located right by the road and everyone can see it. Now the house has totally different curb appeal than what it would have without the arches. It seems that it belongs here as it always have. In the meantime, I also hired an electrician to put my breaker box together. Alright, so I finished the 3 sides and then moved the scaffolding over the last side that was still unfinished. It was already April and still snowing occasionally. You know, I've been realizing that it's already spring and I still don't have the facade done, and I was supposed to have that done by the end of October last year. Total fail, and I still didn't know when I'm actually gonna finish this. I couldn't determine the time frame for the final stucco finish. Plan was, once I'm done straightening this wall, I'm gonna start making phone calls again and search for the finish code contractor. So I started working on it. Needed to reduce the thickness of the entire wall so it reaches below the rake frame. I anchored the whole area, including all those loose blocks, started on the bottom, and using plumbed channels, I transferred the thickness upward. Then again, using drywall sander and hand scraper, I scraped the entire surface down by 2 to 3 centimeters, square meter by square meter when weather permitted. Determined to finish this shit. Making big mess, wind blowing the styrofoam beads all over the village, neighbors complaining about the mess and the noise, but it wasn't my fault I'm doing this, but I had to do this. I needed to wrap it up. Then, using my hot wire saw, I finished installing the styrofoam on the top of the gable wall and anchored all of it as well. Eventually, I got it all done, attached the arches as well as the remaining corner beads and reinforcing mesh. The first base coat was now finished and I started making phone calls. It took me exactly 2 months from February 24th till April 24th, 2021 to address all the issues. Eventually, I found another guy. He came over and inspected everything. Again, seemed pretty knowledgeable as all the previous contractors. The third time is the charm, right? He said not to worry about the second coat, that they're gonna finish all that. They're gonna do the second base coat and the finished stucco coat. He gave me a pretty good quote and said he wants to have it done before the end of June, before he goes on summer vacation. I was like, this is great. Finally, I found someone reliable who's gonna take care of me, who's gonna take care of my house, take care of my stucco finish. All I needed to do for now was to finish insulating the foundation perimeter walls and having the goddamn main gas connection relocated. This is something I have not covered yet. I had a gas line on the property by the curb, but it's never been brought up to the house. So 1 year ago, last April 2020, I filed for a permit to have that gas line relocated to my house so I can have the main valve and the pressure regulator located in a box in the styrofoam facade on the front of my house. Just a little box down there, and then the pipe goes around the corner where there is a bigger box with all the gas meters for each condo unit. So I applied for the permit a year ago and it literally took 11 months to go through all the bureaucracy to be finally able to hire a gas contractor who specializes in this kind of work and start digging. So right after I finished installing the styrofoam blocks onto the foundation wall, which was lots of fun by the way because of all the intriguing shapes I had to carve in it because of the gas line, basement vents relocation, and uneven surface. See, the existing basement vents were located below grade and there used to be these brick surrounds built around it in the ground. But all that been demolished during digging. So I came up with brilliant solution idea to reroute those vents inside the styrofoam using just some scrap wastewater pipes that I split in half. So using this strategy, I brought the vents above the grade and now they work. Sort of. I don't think they're much functional, but anyway, they're gonna be hidden under the decks anyway, and there's not gonna be much air circulation. I could have just blinded out the holes with bricks and mortar and be done with it. Alright, so I finished all that and applied the reinforcing mesh as well, and then I dug yet another hole for the gas hookup, because I discovered that this gas pipe sticking out the ground is surrounded with this large block of concrete. I ended up borrowing a big jackhammer from my neighbor to break it up. So after 1 year of bureaucracy and 20 minutes of labor later, on May 14th, I finally had a gas pipe relocated to my house, all connected to the pipes that's been installed prior. So now the finished stucco coat can finally be applied. I started calling the stucco guy where he's at. I needed him to tell me the time frame. He said they're gonna start by June 14th. Great timing, I thought. They're gonna finish by the end of June and I'm gonna be finally able to wrap up the subsidy application. The invoice for the finished stucco coat is the only thing I'm waiting for, so I have all the invoices I needed to get it reimbursed. So I rented a jumping jack again, backfilled the hole and finished raking around the house as well. Till this day I've been still tripping over piles of dirt because I dug it out again last year prior to the first company started the facade install, so they can install the perimeter styrofoam blocks a little bit under the grade. So while waiting for the stucco guy, I got back to finishing some work on the inside again. Started working on finishing the stair treads and trims and finished the door trim. I bought a big butcher block slab and cut it in pieces for the stair treads, routed the edges, stained it, so I finished putting the stairs together, and then the summer came. So while I've been waiting for the stucco guy to finish my facade, I even started going out for walks, started running and working out at the street workout, working on my handstands and muscle-ups, still putting off the video update till the facade gets done. June 14th been approaching, but it didn't seem like the stucco guy was gonna start on my house anytime soon. Kept making excuses. Either he does not have enough people or he needed to finish something else somewhere else. I kept calling him and texting him, asking him when is he gonna finally start. It was always next week, until he went on that freaking 2-week vacation. I was like, what the fuck? I'm freaking out again. So as I kept waiting, I've been working out. I took it easy. In the meantime, my gas heater and chimney got finally installed, and then the Champlain condo tower collapsed in Miami, and I couldn't stop watching it over and over. Then finally on July 6th, the stucco guy sent me here just one guy to start working on my house. Finally, there's something happening. He was gonna put up the second coat that day on the south side, but never came back to finish the rest of the house with the second base coat. And of course, I kept calling and texting the guy, but again, it was always next week. So while I was still waiting, I started working on finishing some framing in the next 2 unfinished condos. Finished the ceilings, put up some insulation, finished the knee walls, and started pulling through some plumbing. Finished all the sewage pipes and kitchen hood vents, measured out and prepared the connections for the remaining 2 gas heaters as well. Just wanted to use up all of the leftover materials I had so I don't need to spend too much money. So the stucco guy went on that freaking 2-week vacation and then came back. My patience been wearing out. I was getting tired of waiting. Running out of cash, I took that gravestone job starting by the end of July. And the stucco guy kept making excuses next week till August 11th when they finally started working on it. They applied the finished stucco coat on the south side of the house but didn't finish the arches. So I kept calling him again, asking when are they going to finally finish it so I can move the scaffolding to the opposite side. There was this one time he actually showed up and dropped off 10 buckets of premixed stucco compound, but it was different kind than what I ordered. Fortunately, it was better kind and he was not gonna charge me extra money for it, so I was okay with it. I've been running out of patience. Time was flying by, summer was almost over, and I didn't have the facade. So I went ahead and started working on a facade myself because I am not waiting another year. Soon the weather is gonna turn cold again and I have no guarantees that someone will get my facade done. So I went ahead and finished the arches and installed the light and moved the scaffolding to the opposite side. I started working on applying the second base coat. I made sure everything is nice and flat and straight. I used this 2.5 meter long blade for the large areas to spread the mud evenly. I wanted to prep the surface myself to have it ready for the stucco crew so they don't need to waste time with it now. At this point, I needed them to do just the finish coat, which was worth a couple of days of labor. If he was not gonna start working on my house immediately, I was gonna call it off and start searching for someone else. So I finished the second coat and then I even applied third really thin quick coat to take care of all the imperfections and then primed the entire house and waited for the stucco guy to finally gather all his people and for the weather to cooperate so they can finally finish it, but that never happened. They never came back. What happened instead was that the subsidy application middleman informed me that he's stepping away from my application and won't be filing it on my behalf. I was like, why? What's the deal? For the past 3 months you had all my invoices. I kept you in the loop with the facade and I needed that money now, like right now, so I can move on with the project. What am I gonna do now? I needed that money to finish some works. I needed to finish the parking lot and the decks. So I started making phone calls again, searching for another certified company who would file my subsidy application. So after a few phone calls, I found this guy who then came inspect my house. I explained him the whole ordeal and he showed me his pricing. During this conversation, I mentioned the problems I've had with completing the stucco and he recommended a crew that he's been using for his project. Okay, so the third time was not the charm. The third stucco guy never showed up. I stopped calling him and he never called me back. I had the house primed and ready, just waiting for the fourth crew to finish my house now, while working at the graveyards installing more gravestones. After several phone calls, the install been finally scheduled. On September 23rd, the arches got done first, and then on September 25th, 1 year later from the original start, my facade is finally being done. Crew showed up as promised and done the whole house in just one day. So I've been waiting for so long. I've wasted so much time for just a couple of days worth of work. A work that could have been done 1 year ago. Only if everyone does what they said they will do. If everyone does as well as their reviews and recommendations suggest. Everyone claims that they are the best, but the reality is elsewhere when they encounter me, John the Greatest. Of course, I'm just joking, but I just couldn't leave the house as they wanted to leave it for me. I just had to fix it and make sure everything is straight and proper. So I quit the graveyard job because now I needed to finish some more work at my house. I took down the masking after 1 year having my windows covered by plastics and tapes, cleaned the windows. Alright, so I needed to finish the soffit/fascia trim boards. So because I saved some money on the stucco thanks to that previous contractor leaving 10 buckets of mud behind, I was able to purchase all these wood boards and plywood I cut to fit. Painted it 3 coats and installed it, filled the holes, caulked it and painted a couple more coats. Each side took me 3 days, plus of course the rake trim on the north side. Installed the light for the last time. I took the scaffolding down and sold it. Using that money from the scaffolding, I installed the gutter downspouts and had the lightning rods installed. The exterior of my house is now complete. Everything is done. The roof, facade, the gutters, lightning rods. The only thing is missing is the front porch and the rear deck and the parking lot, but I don't have money for that. So what I'm doing in the meantime, I took another job with my other neighbor working on his bathroom build in his attic. So I'll be working on that in the meantime, earning some extra cash so I can actually be able to move out of this first condo unit so I can clear it out and make it available for showings. So where I'm at right now, I'm waiting for some of the legal procedures to finalize. I purchased the city land that I'm now merging with my land. I had the property lines redrawn. That needs to be recorded to the Register of Deeds. After that gets recorded, I need to have my house legally separated into those 3 independent condo units, and that needs to get recorded to the Register of Deeds as well. After that gets completed, I can finally put the first condo for sale. Till then, I need to arrange for my future temporary accommodation so I can clear out this condo to make it available for showings. Okay, so I wasted lots of time on this project, but one thing equals it out, which is the unexpected sudden increase in real estate values. Thanks to this COVID pandemic, the real estate skyrocketed by over 40%. So even though I might have lost a year of life, the profit margin doubles for me right now, but won't see the real numbers till I finally sell. So if you watched all the way through the end, thank you so much for watching and see you at my next epic update video. Stay healthy. Peace.